He sat in my section, ordered a cheap meal, and left a $2 tip. I rolled my eyes like another broke customer. What I didn't know? That man was about to change my entire life, and one day I'd be wearing his mother's $1 billion diamond ring. If you've ever felt like life's been unfair, or like your dreams are just too far out of reach, this story is for you. Hit that like button, subscribe, and stick with me, because what happened still feels like a movie. You ever have one of those lives where it feels like you were born tired? That's me. My name's Tasha. I'm a Black woman in my mid-20s, and at the time, I was just trying to keep my head above water in a small southern town nobody really notices. I worked at this little roadside diner off the highway. You know the kind. Old stools, checkered floors, coffee that never stops pouring. I wasn't there because I loved food or service or people. I was there because I had bills, and bills don't care if you're exhausted. Most days I worked double shifts. I'd open at sunrise and close after dark, my back aching and my smile stretched so thin it barely stayed on my face. My paycheck was a joke, just enough to pay rent, groceries, and keep the lights on if nothing unexpected happened. Spoiler alert, something always did. A busted tire, my little brother's school fees, or my mom needing meds. Life didn't come gently for me or my family. It never had. I was raised by a single mom who was a straight-up warrior. She worked two jobs and still managed to be present, barely, but somehow. I had two younger brothers who looked up to me like I had it all together. But truthfully, I was just winging it, playing big sister, second mom, part-time counselor, and full-time waitress. Dating? Please, I didn't have time or energy for heartbreak or games. I had trust issues anyway. Too many men had come and gone, made promises they never kept. So I shelved the whole idea of love, told myself I didn't need it, but deep down, I had dreams. I used to imagine owning a little bakery. Nothing fancy, just a warm place that smelled like cinnamon and fresh bread. But dreams take money and time, and I had neither, so I tucked that dream away like a letter I'd never mail. Every day I woke up, tied my apron, and told myself, just make it through today. That was my rhythm. Just survive. Keep moving, keep smiling, even when no one saw me, even when I felt invisible. I didn't know it then, but my whole life was about to flip upside down, and it all started with a $2 tip. It was a Tuesday. Not that the day mattered. Every shift bled into the next like watercolors running together. I came in dragging my feet, sleep-deprived, hair tied back in a puff, apron smelling like old bacon and burnt coffee. The sky outside looked like it was about to cry, and business was slower than usual. Rainy days always made folks stay in, which meant less tips, less chatter, and more time with my own tired thoughts. I was wiping down table 7 when the door jingled. A tall man walked in, hoodie soaked, jeans a little too long and wet at the bottom. I glanced up, gave him the standard good morning, with a half smile, then grabbed a menu. He didn't say much, just nodded, walked quietly to a booth by the window, and sat like he was trying not to disturb the air. I've served all types, loud truckers, flirty college boys, grumpy old men, but this guy was different, calm, not cold, not shy, just quiet. He looked around like he was noticing everything but saying nothing. That made me curious, but not enough to stop doing my job. He ordered eggs, toast, and black coffee. Total was maybe $6 and change. When I brought his plate, he smiled and said, "Thank you." Real soft. Not casual thank you, real thank you. Like it actually meant something. I nodded, gave a tired smile back, and moved on. He ate slow, like he had nowhere to be. Every time I walked past, I caught him watching the rain, fingers wrapped around his mug like it held more than just caffeine. I refilled his coffee once, twice. We didn't say much, just exchanged these little glances, like there was some unspoken thing floating between us. When he finally stood up to leave, I went to clear his table and spotted the receipt. Tucked underneath was exactly $2, not even 15%. My stomach tightened. I looked at the bill, then at the door he'd just walked out of. I mumbled, "Seriously?" under my breath. It wasn't the worst tip I'd gotten, not by a long shot, but something about him made it sting a little more. He seemed decent, thoughtful, but $2? I rolled my eyes and scooped up the money, tossing it in the tip jar like it burned my fingers. What I didn't see, though, was the little folded napkin next to the plate. I almost missed it. Written in blue ink, in neat handwriting, were just 4 words. "Thank you for listening." I paused. Listening? We barely spoke. I mean, I asked how he liked his eggs and refilled his coffee. That's it. But I guess in this world, even that small kind of kindness feels rare to some folks. Still, I shook it off. Probably just a weird guy passing through. I had no idea I'd be seeing him again, or that this rainy Tuesday would be the first domino in a line that would end with me wearing a ring worth more than every paycheck I'd ever earned. I didn't expect to see him again. Most people who stop by our diner are passing through: truckers, salesmen, tired travelers looking for a bite and a break from the road. I figured he was the same, a soft-spoken man with kind eyes and a cheap breakfast. But then, he came back. Same booth by the window, same quiet energy, same eggs, toast, and black coffee. I noticed him before he even sat down the second time. There was something about the way he moved, unbothered, like the chaos of the world didn't touch him. He glanced around, saw me, and gave a small nod like we shared a secret. I raised an eyebrow, half amused, half annoyed. $2 wasn't exactly a reason to feel familiar. I brought his menu, and before I could ask, he said, "Same as last time." I smirked. "Guess you're a creature of habit." He chuckled softly. "Or maybe I just like consistency." From that day, he became a regular. Not every day, but often enough that I started noticing little things. He never brought a phone, no laptop, no newspaper. He just sat, watched. Sometimes he'd scribble in a small notebook. Other times, he'd stare out the window like he was waiting for something or someone. My coworkers started teasing me. "Hey, Tasha, your mystery man's back." "Ooh, girl, he's cute in that low-key broke poet way. You gonna marry him for that solid $2 a week?" I'd roll my eyes and play along. "Y'all can have his broke behind if he ever tips $5. But the truth was, I started looking forward to his visits. He always spoke gently, never pushed for conversation. But when we did talk, it wasn't small talk. One day he asked, "What book changed you?" Not if I read, not what I like to read, but what book changed me. Another time he asked, "What's something you're afraid to want?" No man had ever asked me things like that, not without expecting something in return. It threw me off. He'd listen, really listen, like my words mattered, like I mattered. One day, I brought him his usual, and he handed me another napkin note. This one said, "Some people see the surface. Some people see the soul. You saw mine." I held it in my hand a few seconds longer than I meant to. Something fluttered in my chest, and I told myself it was just indigestion from too much diner food. He never told me where he was from, never said what he did for a living. No ring, no name dropping, nothing flashy, just quiet presence and words that lingered. Still, I kept reminding myself, he left $2 tips. He wore the same beat-up hoodie and boots every time. He wasn't exactly future husband material, but something about him felt different. Something I couldn't explain. And every time he walked out that diner door, I found myself wishing he'd come back. I never planned to catch feelings. not for a customer, and definitely not for a guy who left $2 tips and wrote his feelings on napkins like he was stuck in a 90s romance movie. But feelings don't ask for permission, they just show up. It started slow. We'd chat a little more each time. I started sitting at his table for a minute or two when the diner was quiet. At first, I kept it surface level weather, music, books. But he always had this way of steering the conversation deeper without making it feel heavy. Like one day, he asked, "What's your dream, Tasha?" Not the practical one, the scary one. I froze. Nobody ever asked me that, not even my family. I laughed and tried to brush it off with a joke, but he just looked at me, soft, patient, like he could wait all day for the truth. So I told him. I told him about the bakery I used to dream of opening when I was little. The kind where the windows fog up from fresh bread and the smell of cinnamon rolls wraps around you like a warm hug. I told him about naming it after my mama, Ruth's Oven. I even told him I had sketches and recipes tucked in a box under my bed. Stuff I hadn't looked at in years. He didn't laugh. He didn't say, "someday," in that dismissive way people do. He just said, "You should do it. The world needs more places like that." It was so simple, but I swear it hit deeper than most things I'd heard in my life. He kept coming, week after week, always ordered the same thing, always wrote little notes. Sometimes I'd write back, just short ones, at first. Then one day, I caught myself checking my lipstick before my shift started, just in case he came in. I told myself it was nothing, but I knew. And the weird part? I still didn't even know his last name. He never talked about his life, where he lived, what he did for work, if he had family. When I asked once, he smiled and said, "Let's just say I'm between chapters." He was mysterious, but not in a dangerous way. More like safe, but unread. Like a locked journal, I was dying to peek inside. There was a comfort in him, a calm, like I could be myself without trying to impress or protect or perform. And that's rare, especially for someone like me, who's had to be strong for so long. I forgot what it felt like to just be soft. Still, I kept my guard up. A part of me kept whispering, "Don't fall. Don't trust it. He's too good to be real." But another part, some quiet voice I hadn't heard in years, started hoping. Because when he looked at me, I didn't feel like just a tired waitress anymore. I felt seen. And then, just like that, he was gone. No call, no note, no goodbye. Just gone. At first, I didn't notice it. I told myself, maybe he's out of town or maybe he's sick. I even told myself he'd be back next week, sitting in that same booth by the window, hands wrapped around that chipped white coffee mug. But a week passed, then two, and suddenly that booth felt emptier than it ever had. It's strange, really, how someone who was never yours can leave such a big space behind when they disappear. I tried not to act like it mattered. At work, I played it cool, smiled through the shifts, took orders, cleared tables, forced jokes with my coworkers like I always did. But in the quiet moments, when the floor was clean and the lights were dim and I was locking up alone, I felt it, this heavy, aching absence. He had become part of my routine without me even realizing it. Something about the way he listened, the way he saw me. It had chipped away at all the walls I built over the years, slowly, gently, until I started wondering what life might look like with someone like him in it. And then, poof, gone. I'll be honest, I was mad at first. Not the loud kind of mad, the quiet kind. The kind where you're sitting in bed at midnight, replaying every conversation, trying to find the clue you missed. I wondered if I said something wrong. Maybe I came on too strong. Maybe he figured out I was falling for him and ran before things got messy. Or maybe he was never real to begin with. just a nice distraction in a long stretch of hard days. A sweet stranger who reminded me what hope felt like. For a little while, there were days I'd catch myself glancing at the door every time it opened, heart skipping for no reason. And every time it wasn't him, which it never was, that little hope inside me crumbled just a bit more. A part of me hated how much space he took up in my thoughts. I didn't even know him, not really. He could have been anybody, a traveler, a liar, a guy passing through on his way to a better life that didn't include me. But then I'd remember his eyes, the way they softened when I talked about my bakery dream, or the way his voice lowered when he asked about my mama. And I'd think, no, that was real. Whatever it was, it mattered. At least to me. Weeks turned into months. I stopped expecting him. The napkin notes stopped coming. That booth by the window became just another table. I buried myself in work again, picked up extra shifts, helped my brother apply to college, started drawing bakery logos in my notebook again, just to feel close to something that still felt good. But even as I moved forward, something inside me stayed still, like I was waiting, not because I thought he'd come back, but because I didn't know how to let go of someone who made me feel like more than just a girl with tired feet and a fading dream. And just when I finally started to accept he was never coming back, that door opened, and what walked in wasn't the man I remembered. It was someone sharper, someone polished, someone dressed in a tailored suit with shoes that didn't have mud on them. It was him, but it also wasn't. I stood there, frozen, heart pounding, and when he smiled and said, "Tasha, you remember me?" I knew. The story wasn't over. It took me a full 10 seconds to respond. I mean, how do you react when someone who disappeared from your life like a whisper walks back in like a storm, clean cut, dressed in designer everything, and smelling like wealth? Same eyes, same voice, but everything else, different. He was standing in front of me in a navy blue suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. His watch shimmered under the diner lights. His shoes were the kind you don't walk in puddles with. He looked like he stepped out of a luxury magazine and landed right in my run-down, ketchup-stained world. And I was just me. Same apron, same tired shoes, same girl behind the counter. "You clean up nice," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He smiled, that familiar curve of the lips. "Missed the coffee here." I folded my arms. "You missed more than that." His smile faded, just a little. He looked down like he was searching for words, then back up like he was afraid of what I'd say next. "Tasha," he said gently, "can we talk?" Part of me wanted to throw a rag at him and say, "Talk to the tip jar." Another part, deeper, softer, wanted to crawl into that old booth and listen to every word he had stored up during the months he'd been gone. I nodded slowly. "End of my shift. You waitin' or disappearing again?" He raised his hands like surrender. "I'm not going anywhere." He sat in his old booth, like muscle memory, but everything else felt new. People stared. I mean, who wouldn't? A man dressed like that didn't belong here. He belonged in some uptown boardroom or private jet, not this greasy spoon diner on the edge of town. When my shift ended, I grabbed 2 coffees and slid into the seat across from him. "So," I said, staring him down, "you gonna explain the magic trick? Hoodie one day, Hugo Boss the next?" He chuckled. "It's a long story. I've got time." He looked nervous, like someone about to confess something huge. And honestly, I didn't know what to expect. Secret rich family, witness protection, lottery winner. But what he said next, it wasn't just surprising. It changed everything. "I wasn't lying before," he said, "about seeing your soul, about what you gave me when I had nothing left." I narrowed my eyes. "What are you talking about?" He leaned forward, his voice soft. I needed to disappear back then. Life was messy, dangerous even. But meeting you, that changed me. You reminded me what mattered. And then, with the calmest tone I've ever heard, he said, My name isn't just Chris, it's Christopher Langston, and I'm the CEO of Langston Global Holdings. I blinked. Langston, as in the tech billionaire who disappeared from the public eye nearly a year ago? I dropped my coffee. He reached across the table, took my hand, and said, And I came back. For you. I didn't say anything right away. I couldn't, because how do you respond when the man you've been serving scrambled eggs and refilling coffee for months suddenly tells you he's a billionaire? Not just rich, billionaire, as in Forbes list, private jet, bodyguard having kind of billionaire. Christopher Langston. I'd seen his name in the news before. His company built tech for everything from smart homes to space satellites. He was one of those young genius stories, big headlines, fast success, bigger scandals. But I never connected him to my Chris, hoodie Chris, quiet Chris, napkin note Chris. You faked being broke? I asked, my voice low and tight. Why? He nodded slowly. I didn't fake anything, Tasha. I was broke, emotionally, mentally. My life was falling apart. I was drowning in pressure, lawsuits, betrayal. I didn't know who I could trust anymore. I stepped away from the company, shut everything down. I needed to disappear for a while. I just stared at him. Part of me wanted to believe him. Another part wanted to slap that expensive watch right off his wrist. He kept talking, his voice steady, calm, like he'd been rehearsing this moment in his head 100 times. I came to your diner that day with nothing. No assistant, no press team. Just a wallet with a couple of dollars and a head full of noise. And then I met you. I looked down at our hands, his fingers warm against mine. You didn't know who I was. You didn't care. You treated me like a human. You listened when I felt invisible. You asked nothing of me. No one had done that in a long time. I shook my head. So, you were testing me? To see if I'd treat you different if I knew? No, he said quickly. It wasn't a game. I didn't plan any of this. You were just safe, real. And then I started coming back. Not for the food, not for the coffee, but for you. His eyes searched mine, and I saw something I hadn't expected to find in a billionaire's gaze. Fear. I didn't tell you the truth because I was afraid it would ruin everything, that you'd stop seeing me. I exhaled slowly. I was quiet for a long time. My heart was racing, but my thoughts were cloudy. You disappeared without a word, I finally said. Do you know how that felt? He looked down, guilt written all over his face. I know, and I've regretted it every day. But I'm here now. I want to make it right. The words hung in the air between us, a silence that said more than any explanation ever could. Because, yeah, I was hurt, confused, a little angry. But I also knew this: the man who sat in front of me now, the billionaire, the broken soul, the one who left and came back, that was still my Chris. And somehow, I still wasn't ready to let him go. The next time he came in, he didn't come alone. It was just after closing. The neon open sign had gone dark, the booths were wiped clean, and I was counting tips at the register when the bell above the door jingled. There he was, Chris, dressed simple again. No suit, no show. Just jeans, a gray sweater, and a nervous smile. But what caught my eye wasn't what he wore. It was the tiny velvet box in his hand. He walked slowly to the counter, heart in his eyes. Can we talk? He asked, like he hadn't already turned my whole world upside down. I nodded silently. He placed the box between us. I want to explain something, he said. He opened it, and there it was. The most beautiful ring I'd ever seen. Not flashy, Not some giant rock meant to impress the tabloids. No, it was elegant, vintage, a delicate band with a single emerald stone surrounded by tiny diamonds. Classic, personal. My grandmother's, he said softly. The only thing I ever kept from the old world that still feels like home. I looked at him, confused. Why are you showing me this? He took a deep breath. Because before I disappeared, I had already lost everything that mattered. Money didn't mean much anymore. Success didn't either. I was surrounded by people who smiled to my face and stabbed my back. He paused, voice shaking a little. But when I met you, I remembered who I was, who I wanted to be. I felt tears stinging my eyes. I carried this ring with me during that time, he said, not because I planned to use it, but because it reminded me of love, real love, something I didn't believe existed anymore. He looked down at the ring, then up at me. And then you came along, asking how my day was, remembering how I liked my eggs, handing me coffee with those tired eyes that still somehow sparkled. I laughed through my tears. Don't start making me cry in my own diner. He smiled gently. I'm not asking anything from you, Tasha. Not yet. I just want you to have this. My breath caught. Wait, what? He slid the box closer. This isn't a proposal. This is a promise, a reminder that you were never just a waitress to me. You were the light I didn't know I needed. I stared at the ring. My hands shook. I can't take this, I whispered. He tilted his head. You can, because it's not about money, it's about meaning. And somehow, I believed him. I took the box, held it like it was made of glass. I'm not saying yes to anything, I told him. He grinned. You already said yes the moment you looked at me like I was a human, not a headline. And in that quiet moment, under the hum of a flickering ceiling light and the smell of leftover pie and coffee grounds, something shifted, not between rich and poor, not between billionaire and waitress, but between two people who had found each other when they were both a little lost. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept the ring box on my nightstand, staring at it like it held 100 answers to questions I hadn't even dared to ask. I wasn't thinking about money or status. Not really. I was thinking about trust, about whether my heart could handle believing in someone again. See, people don't talk enough about how hard it is to receive love when you've spent your whole life surviving. When you're used to being let down, abandoned, overlooked, you start to expect it. You build armor. You convince yourself that fairy tales are just stories meant for other people. And now, here I was, being handed something real by someone who could have had anyone, but came back for me. The next morning, I put on my best dress. Nothing fancy, just soft, clean, and me. I tucked the ring box into my coat pocket and headed out the door with a shaky heart and a quiet prayer. We met at the park. It was early, the sky still deciding between sunrise and cloud. He stood by a bench, hands in his pockets, pacing slightly. When he saw me, he froze. I walked up, pulled the box from my coat, and placed it in his hands. He looked down, brows creasing. It's okay, he whispered. If it's too much, I'm not giving it back, I cut in. I'm giving it meaning. He looked up, confused. I took a deep breath. This ring? It's not about promises made under pressure. It's about showing up now, being here with each other in this crazy, unexpected life. He smiled, relief and something else, hope, lighting up his eyes. I'm scared, I admitted, but I'm also ready. If we're doing this, we do it real. No hiding, no disappearing, no pretending. I wouldn't ask for anything less, he said, his voice thick with emotion. We sat on the bench, side by side, watching the sun break through the clouds like a quiet miracle. He slipped the ring onto my finger, not like a proposal, but like a beginning. It fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for me all along. I leaned my head on his shoulder. We didn't say much after that. We didn't need to. For once, there was no noise in my head, no doubt, just peace. And that tiny whisper inside me, the one I'd tried to bury for years, it finally spoke up. Maybe, just maybe, this is the love I deserve. Because sometimes love doesn't show up in grand gestures or fairy tale moments. Sometimes it walks into your life in muddy boots, leaves you a $2 tip, and writes the first chapter of Forever on a napkin. If this story touched your heart like it did mine, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And remember, your story isn't over yet. Stay kind, stay open, and you never know. Your miracle might just leave a $2 tip.